Well, it's time now to check in with leading players in global finance, because we've seen momentum among banks and investors. But the question, of course, can the capital markets come good on their promises? To tell us how they're managing net zero and trying to contribute to a nature recovery, I'm joined now by the CEO of La Banque Postale, that's Philippe Heim, and Sir Ronald Cohen, the father of social investment. Lovely to see you there, gentlemen. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning.
Now, as you both know, nature loss threatens 50% of global GDP. So I'd like to start with you, Philippe. How are you accounting for these risks across your portfolios?
We know that if we want to cope with the 2050 agenda, we have now to stop all new oil and gas facilities. So this is a point we take very seriously. And the new elements that we are well aware that climate risk is part of financial risk. So this is now a systemic risk. This is now taken into consideration, for example, in the supervisions made by ECB, the UK PRA. So we applied stress tests and we make sure that we're able to cope with the risk down the road.
We're moving to a world where the impacts of companies are going to be as transparent as their profits. We can already see the environmental damage in monetary terms caused by thousands of companies. This enables us to judge those companies that deliver profit and impact at the same time. And financial markets, to answer your question, are the biggest lever for shifting our economies to deliver solutions to our climate and social problems rather than creating them.
Philippe Heim, you mentioned earlier your commitment, but how are you turning those commitments into action? Concretely, how has your investment strategy changed?
First of all, we were very proud that our decarbonization trajectory has been certified by an independent body, the SBTi. You know, this is a development of UN nations. Then, of course, the point for us is to take strong commitments. The one I mentioned before is that we decided to exit from oil and gas activities by 2030. And then a point that is very important is that we involved our clients in the transition. So we have decided to turn all our products for companies as well as for retail clients so that they can concretely participate to this transition.
And Sir Ronald Cohen, what are your expectations of companies like La Banque Postale?
Our expectations are that some companies will go in this direction and voluntarily reduce their emissions. But we're going to need regulation to make sure that every company achieves the objectives that we need to achieve if we're going to preserve our planet. The only way to achieve this is to have transparency on the environmental impacts that companies create. Governments don't create environmental damage, companies do. And the only way to prevent the greenwashing that we have currently, where a lot of companies are just making claims about their environmental performance, which can't be substantiated, is for regulators to step in and to mandate the publication of impact statements that show their revenues, their costs, and their environmental and social impacts.
Your reaction to that, Philippe Heim?
Yes, I fully agree to what has been said by Ronald, in the sense that there is a thin boundary between communication and real commitments. And we have to be aware of that because it is fueling growing distrust, for example, among young people. There is this, eco-anxiety, and we need to address that. That's why I do agree that we need rules. We need regulators to step in and to impose a common set of language. So in that sense, the taxonomy, the European taxonomy, I think is a very good step forward.
And Sir Ronald Cohen, do you think that investors will have to lower their expectations for return on equity?
No, I believe that optimizing risk-return impact, as I say in my book, Impact, will deliver better returns for investors than optimizing risk and return alone, because you avoid the risk of regulation and of taxation, and you take advantage of changes in values that mean that consumers want to buy your product, talent wants to work for you, and investors want to invest in you.
But I guess the big problem is, gentlemen, is that markets are so driven by short-termism. So I guess my question to you both is, how can climate and nature risks to be accounted for if there's so little alignment between fund managers' time horizons and the impact on the environment? Philippe Heim, I'll ask you that one.
Yes, that's sure. We need to expand time horizons. So that's for sure. But at the same time, I'm pretty optimistic. So there is a growing awareness among investors that can distinguish companies that have to finance deep and severe transition, and those who are already, let's say, up and running. And so we can see, for example, in asset management, in private banking, that you have two kinds of clients. So as those who have a strong awareness, are militants for a cause, and that's very interesting, that from a pure financial standpoint, they consider that investing in green is a wise investment, a wise choice to optimize their profit. So I think so. There is a movement that is already in place. That's why I think it's pretty positive. So we need now to align all actors, all stakeholders, to continue in that direction.
And Sir Ronald Cohen, what do you think is the ultimate impact that investment can have now, where money is most needed and where it's most impactful?
There's no doubt that we're going to find innovation leads us to new forms of clean energy. Hundreds of billions and trillions of dollars are going to go in that direction. But at the same time, there are big social issues around us. Diversity is a major issue that we've not been able to solve. And so I see a lot of money also going to companies that have the right product and the right employment practices, that don't use child labor, that don't underpay their workers below the living wage. So we've shifted the goalposts for business now from achieving profit alone to achieving profit and impact. And the two are linked. We can already see that the companies that pollute more are worth less on the stock exchange.
And Philippe, of course, stock prices could fall 41% with a carbon price of $150. So my question to you is, how would investors deal with this?
Well, that's why investors now are applying, let's say, pretty in-depth due diligence in their investments. So, for example, in asset management, our teams now are conducting pretty in-depth analysis before any investment.
And Sir Cohen, do you think that our current macroeconomic indicators are fit for how investors can meet their ambitions to decarbonise and decouple their portfolios from negative nature impacts?
We don't have a system in place to deliver the impacts we need. That's why we spent 4 decades until now trying to create consensus about climate. In the 30s, we didn't have transparency on profit. And the US government came in and established generally accepted accounting principles and the use of auditors. We need the same thing today in order to measure the impacts of companies in a granular way.
But Sir Ronald Cohen, why do you think we still don't have a global price on carbon?
We don't have a global price on carbon because you can't expect companies to agree to something that's going to make them look bad. You need an outside body to establish a standard. This is going to be the price of carbon, and here's the scientific evidence for it. And that's how companies are going to prepare their impact figures. Until you have that, people are going to be using $10 or $100. And we need standardization. That's why we don't have it. And regulators will have to put it in place so that we can compare the carbon footprints of different companies.
And Philippe, what is your definition of a really true green company?
This is a company, I would say, if we simplify. So in a nutshell, this is a company that has completely changed its own governance. So that is led by a clear purpose and has changed also its governance. So as far as we are concerned, we have established a purpose which clearly as a goal, the just transition.
And same question to you, Sir Ronald Cohen. Just a brief answer, if you will.
I agree with Philippe about governance. At the end of the day, a company that measures its impacts and shows that it is delivering improving impacts year after year, just as it does with profits, and does so in the environmental area, is a green company.
Sir Ronald Cohen, thank you so much for joining us. And Philippe, I'm the CEO there of La Banque Postale. Thank you so much. Really interesting stuff there.
Thank you.
Thank you.